Thank you for agreeing to talk with me today. My name's Trisha, and I have Miss Barbara Bassett with me today, and she's going to be telling us a little bit about her quilting experience and Monday Quilters. When did you first start sewing quilts?
I believe it was back in 2011. I retired from the school district in 2010, and it was around 2011.
And how did you decide to join this ministry?
That was the same time. That's because I'd never sewed quilts before. I crocheted. My mother taught me to crochet, and I love to sew. I made all my dresses when I was in high school, most of them. I just always loved to sew, and I wanted a little girl to sew for. And I had a little tomboy.
Well, that's okay. You had a
Yeah.
granddaughter, and didn't she kind of spur you along into quilting?
She was interested in sewing, and when I got interested at the quilting ministry, she watched me a lot of times when she was home from college. I know we had tape on some of where I would make the seams. We used tape, and she said, "What is the tape for?" She even took the pins out of where I had pins one time when she was with me. And I told her, well, the tape was my guiding line to sew on. If I don't sew on a seam or, where the thread goes, I needed to have something to go by, because you can't, it's like drawing a straight line. You can't sew a straight line if you don't. Some people might can, but I needed help.
How do you decide as a group who's going to get the quilts that you make?
Well, evidently the ministry started that back when they first began it, to deliver to nursing homes and hospital. We had looked into the children's hospital, but then with going through Ronald McDonald House, we didn't need to take him to the hospital because the Ronald McDonald House does that. And then we went to a baby clinic in Robertsdale. We went to a veterans clinic in, I think it was Daphne or Foley, I'm not sure which, but just where there's a need. And we always worked with the activities director to tell us who could use the quilt. And the residents were just so thankful, and so they made me feel so blessed that some of them were amazed that we were giving them a quilt. And we would always try to tell them that this is a hug of love, that if you feel down or lonely, or just wrap that quilt around you, and it's a hug of love.
That's amazing. And how long does it usually take you to make the quilts?
It varies, because I started out making children's quilts, and so they're not as large. We don't make like queen size or double size bed. We make lap quilts for mainly residents that are in nursing homes or retirement centers. They're in a wheelchair, and so we keep them kind of small for that use. But some of them do look good on a single size bed. But we made 63 last year, there were 7 of us, and
Wow.
that's a lot of quilts.
That's about
I
a
think our
quilt a
church,
week.
well, I think our church was impressed when we
Wow.
were able to share. We gave to 3 nursing homes and to Ronald McDonald House.
Wow. I know that was a blessing for those families.
Oh, yes. The Ronald McDonald House was very interesting. I knew somewhat of what they did, but I didn't know the extent of their ministry, and I was very impressed. And so I don't have a set size that I make a quilt. When I do a pattern or I design one myself, it turns out however it turns out sometimes. And it's fun. I love the creation part of it, putting a pattern together and coordinating colors. And I have certain patterns that I like to do over and over again, naturally.
That would make sense. And when COVID came about, your group couldn't meet, but y'all did something interesting instead. What did you do?
We started making masks. We got a pattern. One of the ladies got a pattern off the internet, and then we met at the church where we meet every Monday to sew, and gave us each the pattern, and we all started making masks at home. And my daughter even came over on the weekends and helped me make masks. And she's not one to sew, but she was a big help. And we'd give them to patients, people who knew people that could use the masks, and that was a blessing, because we didn't meet for like 3 months during
Wow.
that COVID time. Of course, I still sewed some, but making masks was busy. No
Yes.
time for making quilts. Another wonderful thing about it was one of the ladies had filter material that we'd gotten from the Chemstrand. It was material, and we would sew it between the cotton, so it was more filtered than just regular cotton masks, and that made us feel good too.
And I even had my neighbors, her mother went to work at a grocery store, and I asked her, does she need a mask? And she said yes, and I gave her some masks, and of course they wanted to pay me, and I said, no, don't, just bring toilet tissue or groceries or a loaf of bread, something like that. And so that was a blessing too, to be able to make masks. And we didn't count, but we must have made between all of us, we must have made close to 300 masks.
What an amazing project and group that you have. So you just need some time and a sewing machine and a few little ideas, and you're good to go.
And the want to do it, to the desire, because sewing's not everybody's quirk. I sew every day because I love to sew. Everybody has their interest, what they like to do. And in fact, I grew up sewing. Well, we had home ec when I was in high school, and I can't tell you what I cooked, but I can tell you what I made.
And when we gave to Ronald McDonald House last year, they just made us feel so welcome, and so that they need them and they appreciated them, that we said, we're going to give to Ronald McDonald again this year. So children and men are my priority this year. Make sure it's sewing back there. I've had that happen where the bobbin runs out or the thread will break, and I'm just sewing along and no thread in the machine.
Well, thank you so much for speaking with me today.
Oh, you're very welcome. It's a pleasure.
And that's a wrap.